Hello, and welcome back to Tartan Touchdown, Scotland's voice in the conversation around the world of American football. Today's episode is a really important one for the sport as a whole. Before we begin, make sure you're following us across all of our social media accounts, you're subscribed to our YouTube, and hit the bell to get notified when we drop our videos, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Zoe John, researcher, athlete, and someone who's been doing really powerful work looking at the lived experiences of women and gender diverse people in American football. Her research, titled Easily Forgotten, dives into everything from playing experience and coaching culture to facilities, inclusion, and some of the deeper cultural issues within the game. So Zoe, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's just, it's always a very important issue to continue to highlight as the sport really continues to grow, especially across kind of all the divisions, not just the male sport, with the kind of rise in the female sport. So thank you for the work that you've done. And I am very privileged to be able to highlight that to a wider audience. So to start us off, your background is quite unique because you weren't just researching the sport, you've lived it at quite a high level. How did you first kind of get into American football, and what led you kind of toward researching gender within it?
Yeah, so I didn't really do any kind of physical activity when I was younger. Moved to Cardiff, started uni, did Muay Thai, wanted to be a mixed martial arts fighter. It was a bit of a lonely place, the only girl in the club, all that kind of stuff. And then my mate said to me, she was like, "You like to hit people, don't you?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's not quite as simple as that, but yeah, I guess, yeah." She was like, "Oh, I'm starting an American football club." And I was like, "Right, what's that?" I had completely no idea at all. I didn't even watch rugby. I didn't even do rugby as a young person in Wales, which is absolutely horrific to say. But yeah, I just went along. It was a flag session. First off, we did flag for the first year with Cardiff Valkyries, but I just loved it. I loved every minute of it. I think just being part of a group of women that got together, that tried to make each other better, that it sort of gave me that sort of self-belief to go, oh, actually, I might actually be good at sports, which I never thought I would be. And then as soon as we started contact as well, I was absolutely in my element. I was like, yep, this is for me. Linebacker, blitz every play, wonderful, bish, bash, bosh. Since that moment, it's just been stuck with me ever since. So I think it's about 10 years ago that I started flag. So yeah, nearly doing it a decade now, probably another decade left, maybe not with men's. Yeah, so that's the kind of sporting side really. Just started to get those development days, like Diamond Series is a thing that some people might remember back in the day. And that's how I originally sort of got scouted to get into that GB program sort of level in 2019. Unfortunately, didn't make the squad. I had to have emergency surgery, but then came back for the Worlds 2022, finally got selected. And then since then, I feel like a lot more comfortable and confident in my space in that program. So yeah, it's been ups and downs, but it's been life-changing for me really. And then I think the research side of it came, so my PhD research, my doctoral research was looking at mixed martial arts and gendered embodiment. How do people train with each other? How do people talk to each other? How do coaches interact with people? And I did the mixed martial arts classes as a method. So went into the club for a couple of months. I did the classes, some classes I just observed, and essentially I was sexually harassed the entire time by the head coach. As you do. But there was this really sort of insidious nature to it where it was really normalised, and normalised by myself as well, that coach-player dynamic where you just kind of just go, yes, coach, and you just kind of carry on. Other people don't say anything, other people laugh, so you're like, that's a joke. This is part of being one of the lads. It was a really strange place to be in as a young woman, one of the only women there. So went through a lot of difficulty, went through a lot of trauma in that space, had to get counselling and everything. Mixed martial arts is a sport where you learn to hurt people. And I know there's loads of other things to it, right? Ultimately, you know how to hit people. Had a lot of issues there. And I thought, why not do something similar, but with American football? Let's see what people are saying here. It's a different dynamic, lots more women in the sport, lots of different roles, responsibilities. You've got flag, you've got contact, you've got 5, 7s, 9s, 11s. And yeah, that was the decision really to start looking at a sport that's really not been looked at the UK, especially in the gender dynamic, especially in that qualitative lived experience dynamic. There's been some really interesting work on concussion, on injury, and sort of survey-based data. I know Ellie, I can't remember her last name. She's going to be upset. Does a lot of physiotherapy with the GB flag team. She's done a lot of research around sort of those issues as well. But yeah, I wanted to see that sort of gender side of it. And I think it happened. It was coming through immediately, sort of interview after interview, which I'm sure we'll sort of touch upon in a lot more detail as we chat, I guess.
Yeah, I know, for sure. Yeah. Thank you for running through that. And it's so difficult to hear when other women go through kind of those kind of like sexual harassment experiences, because like, I mean, I can't even remember the stat, but it's like, what is something ridiculous? It's like 1 in 2 pretty much women face sexual harassment on a almost daily basis. So as a just know, I'm very, very sorry that happened to you. I know it doesn't change anything, but I totally sympathize with you for that. Kind of having that dual perspective as both kind of a player and a researcher when it comes to American football, like how do you think that shaped the way you kind of like approached this work in particular?
Yeah, I think it definitely allowed that some of the barriers that other researchers might have who aren't part of a team or are known in the sport. So I think the link to different connections was obviously a really big positive. And certainly I've interviewed people that I don't know, but I think when you play a sport and when people see you play a sport, they kind of know you're not in there just to get like an interesting scoop of something to then go on like BBC. Because you find that with unique sports, cage fighting is one of those sports where people come in and say they're going to do one thing and then they go and interview people on a completely separate note. So I think there was that level of trust there. I'm relatively well known in the football circles, so I think that allowed that openness and conversation to happen because I understand what it's like. I understand what it's like just to play football. I understand what it's like to be injured and you can't play. I understand all those different things that other people it makes people feel a lot safer to sort of chat through certain things with you, I think. So yeah, that was one element. But then I guess the downside is when you hear these stories and it's a small community, like it's getting bigger, but it's a small community. Trying to make sure people feel safe and protected in order to share their experiences, trying to make sure I'm safe and protected, hearing those experiences myself. I think that's why I needed a little bit of time from the initial data collection to actually comprehend what was happening and how I was digesting it, and wondering all the different things of, do I know that person that happened to? Do I know that person who did that thing? It makes you question a lot of the things within the sport, within the structure and the integrity of different clubs, the role of safeguarding, and is that actually happening? And all the misconceptions I think that we have about our sport. And I think on that note, it's important to say, like, the problems that I'm going to talk about, it's not an American football problem, it's a misogyny problem. And so I think that's where, like, I've been to a lot of really fascinating conferences, heard a lot of lived experiences, survivor advocates saying it's not that we hate this particular sport, we love it and that's why we want to make it better. But if people just go, no, there's no problems, we have women coaching in our team, okay, that doesn't mean anyone's safe. I mean, so I think it's just allowing people to really think about their own position, what they can do to be better, the fact that you can never really have a purely safe environment, but you can do things to make sure that if stuff happens, things can happen straight away. They can feel safe from that point. Dangerous people are out of the program, all those sorts of things, really. So yeah, that's a bit of a long-winded way of saying some positives, some negatives. Has been difficult to navigate in terms of my own positionality between player, coach, researcher, author, those things that I'm still trying to navigate, to be honest.
Yeah, trying to get the kind of balance right in them all must be really, really difficult. And I'm glad you kind of obviously after you've done the kind of initial research part, you were able to kind of like just take that time just to try and then put it all together, because you just don't know what it obviously could have potentially looked like if you ran all the way straight through it. The title of your research, Easily Forgotten, I think really stands out. What does that phrase represent in the kind of context of what you found?
Yeah, so the term easily forgotten, it's something one of the participants said to me, so it's sort of a verbatim quotation. And the research, predominantly what people wanted to talk about or had things to say about was the mixed leagues. So when you're the only woman on a team, when you're the only girl on the team, or one of a couple, right? And it's the things socially, it's the things when it comes to game day, and it's the things at training. So you've got the direct training, playing elements, and then the things that people overlook you, I think is the key, Tim. Feeling isolated, people feeling scared to say hello to you because they're worried about being perceived a certain way, but then they'll joke about misogyny and sexism right next to you with their mate, and you're just like, why can't you just throw me the ball? If you're all throwing a ball in a circle with your mates and you're the only one not being thrown to, that says a particular thing, right? And like game day scenarios, having team huddles and team talks without women because they're in different changing rooms, getting everyone to go on the pitch and start warming up, haven't told the women because they're in the changing rooms. Well, not even having a changing room. During COVID as well, we've had women change in parking lots. That's a very Americanized term, but parking spaces in cars because they've completely been forgotten off the roster. And things like just making sure women are taking reps at training, because if you feel isolated and if you don't feel good enough, you're not going to say, oh, coach, I'm going to go right up here and I'm going to be doing routes before everyone else. And it's just the drifting off into the backdrop. And it's the irony of, if you are the only woman on the team, how can you be forgotten? Because you stick out like a sore thumb for the most part in terms of how they feel, in terms of how the other team see them. So it's figuring out, I guess, how to start making their presence noticeable, and they're trying to figure out this in different ways as well. But yeah, I think it is that there's almost a sadness in it, that just easily forgotten part. The women that I have spoken to, there's almost like this pattern of, you'll go to a uni ball team or you'll go to a senior team, you'll do one season, then you'll drop off, or you're the only girl there, but there were 3 or 4, but they've dropped off as well. They might be the last to get kit. They might be the last to get this, that, and the other. And that's arguably a problem of funding, of everything else. But if that's a problem, then that needs to be communicated with. Like, it's that just complete lack of transparency that the women have experienced for the most part. There have been some like good cases, which we'll chat about later on, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just feeling isolated and just literally feeling like you're not there.
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful like place to kind of start, because it speaks something much deeper than just like participation. You're obviously talking about like visibility and then like the kind of female and like non-gender specific value within the sport.
Yeah.
One of the kind of like the big themes in your research is, what can you describe as like that culture of silence and acceptance? Can you paint a kind of a picture for us of what that looks like day to day team environment wise?
Yeah, and this is arguably a thing that extends beyond women's experiences. Like, the culture of silence and acceptance is a thing across all sports, where that power dynamic of the coach, of the coaching staff, of the wider staff, have that power over you as an athlete. And understandably, in sport, there needs to be that hierarchy, but it's about all those insidious things in between where, you know, a coach says something inappropriate, and then you're like, right, so if I want game time, I just have to put up with that. If you go to a welfare officer, for example, and you don't feel safe to, how do you progress from that? Do the coach have favourites in positions of power within the team or within a programme that make it more difficult for you to come forward and chat about things? And this was the case in the MMA gym I was at as well. And you see it in gymnastics and swimming, literally at all levels, from the leisure to the professionals. If you want game time, if you want to be that starter, if you want to be that person on the track, and your coach is in that sort of abusive power, you put up with it. It's an exchange. It's an exchange of your own sort of self-worth and self-identity in order to do the thing that you love doing, especially at Britball, right? We pay to play. We love it. We love it so much that we pay lots of money. We take up all our weekends and all the rest of it. And you want to play. So you kind of shut up and move on. But it's thinking, if you're scared to say no, if you're scared to approach a coach, if you're scared of the repercussions of you coming forward with something, that's a bit of a problem. Like that is a problem. And it shouldn't be the case of, when I'm talking about that, it's just women or just children. It's across the board, right? We all have livelihoods, especially in Britball. We all have places to be on a Monday or even a Sunday night shift, depending on what you're doing. I think it's just, just sometimes, from what the stories have been, just the lack of respect towards people as individuals in that space. And it extends to players as well. When you've got your good players, your players might not be paying their subs. Your players might be abusive to other people. They may be saying inappropriate things, doing inappropriate things to other players or even other coaches or people on the sideline. But if they're a good player and they're going to be the playmaker, they're probably going to stay on the field. stay on the field. And we know with numbers in this sport as well, if you've got players that are acting inappropriately, and it means the difference of not playing a game and forfeiting a game or letting them play, people make their decisions, and it's not always the best. So yeah, I think that sort of encapsulates the overarching themes of what was coming back. And it was sort of, from a researcher standpoint as well, that's exactly what I did in that mixed martial arts gym, where I wanted data. So I just I put up with it. I exchanged. That was the exchange for me to be in that space, was putting up with that derogatory behaviour to be able to write about it. Probably not the best move, but these are the things that we do in these kind of sporting spaces where it's probably not the best thing.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, do you think that because players in particular, if we just take American football, because they love the sport so much and it's the thing that, you know, takes them away from maybe a stress at work, a stress at home, whatever it may be, like that's why they're kind of more willing or feel like they just have to put up with this like kind of certain behavior to stay involved, for like that kind of sense of belonging to something and being involved in something.
Yeah, absolutely, unfortunately. And I mean, if you look at the map of where teams are located, if you can't play in that team, where are you going to go? Like Scotland as an example, right? What teams are around if you're not going to go to that team? Like, how far are you willing to travel? Like, I travel, not that anything bad happened with Cardiff, I should definitely emphasise that, but Birmingham did 9s rather than 7s. So, like, I travel to Birmingham every Saturday. I'm up at 6:30. I get home at 3:30. Like, I love doing it. Other people might not want to do that, especially if the reason is because they feel like there's no other option to, because of unhealthy sporting environments or, you know, inappropriate coaches. It makes it would make that experience even more difficult and lonesome and expensive as well. So yeah, the options to just move club aren't as simple as someone might think.
For sure. And you obviously highlighted it, but it's definitely not just an American football problem. It is definitely kind of a part of that kind of like wider sporting culture. Like I even think to like even ice skating, for example, which is such a expensive and such a harsh sport to do as a child. And just kind of thinking of like the kind of those power dynamics that exist between kind of like coach and player, well, coach and I guess performer, if we're going to use that kind of term. So yeah, it's not just like a team sport. It also can be down to individual, like gymnastics, it can be dance, it can be across everything, for sure. And you kind of in your research, you include some really like quite stark examples from like inappropriate comments to kind of really more serious behavior. How common are those experiences, kind of based on what you've seen?
Very common, unfortunately. Like I said, there are good coaches out there are good people out there, but the frequency that this is happening, based on the people I've spoken to and the people that I've had informal conversations with as well, people are willing to talk to me because of those more negative experiences, because they need to get it off their chest as well. So there's definitely almost like not a bias, but people are more wanting to talk about these negative experiences because they've not felt that they've been able to talk about it with other people. But the women I've spoken to, and some of the men as well, have noted the predominantly issues around sexism and misogyny from the coaches trying to match with them on Tinder, from players exposing themselves to women in the changing room, to sexist chants to female players from opposition teams as they're walking past the changing room, and coaches saying inappropriate things at training to them while at training in vulnerable positions. So yeah, it's this spectrum of violence, which is the thing I'm very interested in sporting research generally. I'm interested in sporting criminology, that sort of normalization of violence in the sporting locations and locales. So yeah, it's also the surrounding atmosphere of certain things too. So uni ball, you know, you've got American football, you've got mixed leagues, you've got cheerleaders and American footballers also doing a lot of activities and social things together. And alcohol on top of all of that is an absolute mixer for trouble of many kinds. But yes, there have been incidences which probably should have required police involvement. And again, unfortunately, that is also the everyday experience for a lot of women, regardless of sporting environments too. But there's something about the sporting environment, particularly when it is male dominated, where again, because you want to fit in yourself as a guy, like you might also buy into that silence and acceptance. You might also be experiencing stuff yourself, and it's even harder to come forward because you're a guy. you've got all these different variables. But it is unfortunate that a lot of the things I have listened to have been that more negative, that more serious, concerning feedback of their experiences, for sure.
Yeah, and then you mentioned it there, but to kind of talk about how these environments impact players on like a social kind of level. Obviously, if they're going out and they're mixing and they're, they're drinking and they're doing all these things. Like, also when you mentioned like, male players like flashing female players and like the locker rooms and the changing environments and things, so that obviously then impacts their actual experience on the field. Can you talk a lot about like playing time and expectations and communication? From what you found, kind of what are coaches really getting wrong when it comes to supporting women players?
Yeah, I think one thing is, it's just communication is a huge thing. And as I've spoken to coaches generally about their experiences, one of the things they note most about the differences between men and women is women ask why. Like, in terms of drills, why? Whereas the guys will just do it and might not necessarily think about the theoretical implications of that particular drill in a particular scenario. So women like more communication anyway. But when you have women that go to every single training session, that are on time, they're doing stuff that they're meant to in the gym, they're doing their homework, they're in their playbook, and then a coach goes, yeah, you're going to get game time on Saturday or Sunday, and then they get nothing. That's a clear communication barrier where they might be saying it because they think that's a good thing to say, but then you'd expect reps. So did you plan to give them reps? If not, why? Is it because you don't think they're going to win the one-on-ones? What is it? Are you going to even give them a chance to show you what they can do? And it's that expectation, or just like trying to understand the expectations of why women are there. Because some women don't want to play at all. They just want to train, because we don't have access to 11s. We don't have access to the coaching that a lot of mixed and senior, uni ball and senior teams do. So they might not even want reps in the first place. But I think it's understanding, like, what would you like to improve on? What would you like to meet as? Do you want to be a starter? Is that going to happen? Let's have a conversation about it. I think it's more often than not, there's sort of two categories of the coach trying to do the right thing by saying, yeah, you're doing really well. Yeah, this is where you are on the depth chart. Good. And then game day, something completely different happens. And you're like, okay, so is that offensive coordinator decision? Is that a head coach decision? Is that a positional coach decision on the day? Like, what is it about? And then you have the flip side where you have coaches that are just outrightly negative and dismissing and all the rest of it. So you've got this big barrier almost. And again, there's a lot of variables to consider. Like, the coaching team you have one year is going to be different to the next. So if you come in your rookie year in year one and they're like, yeah, this is the year we're training you up, then next year this is when you're going to be getting your reps. And then you have someone completely new and they're like, no. Like, how do you manage that? It is difficult, and there's no quick solutions. But I think that's why communication and having open and honest communications is the most important thing. Because, like, especially if you're in a big team, if you're in a competitive team, you might not get the same amount of reps anyway. But it's understanding what that looks like and what that is going to look like for that player. So yeah, it's a difficult one for sure. But I would say just communication and just being honest. The worst thing you can do is lie, even if it's a white lie, because then you feel worse after game day when you finally psyched yourself up after getting changed in the scabby changing room, toilet with pee everywhere, and you've missed your team talk, and now they're calling you late and you're not locked in. I didn't know anyone else was out here, and then you finally go and you're going to get your reps. You psych yourself out, and then nothing happens. It's a different game day. It's a completely different game day for women in those experiences for the most part.
And it's just like, because if you don't have that if you have a lack of clear communication around all of that, then it just totally is just knocking on confidence. And then even worse than that, it's just there's no retention. Like, you don't want to come back because you don't understand what's happening. You don't understand why you're turning up, why you're paying this money. So obviously that must have like a massive impact on that. And you brought it up there, but when you're talking about how coaches need to understand what success kind of looks like for women in this sport in particular, what do you think that means in kind of practice for them?
Again, I think it's just conversation. Because everyone's going to have their own sort of subjective experiences of what success looks like. For some women, the rate of success is getting on the field and getting reps. For others, it's I don't want to play, but I want to get into GB. For others, they just want to understand more about 11s and have the confidence to then go coach at another team. For some women, they want to be a starter. It's so varied, and given some of the limitations of women's accessibility to football generally, like there's nothing wrong with having a conversation of these are the things we expect from you and these are the things you can expect from us. This is the expectation of the program. I think especially when you are the only woman on a team or you're one of 3, I think just having those conversations of expectations and this is how you should be treated by other people, you should not feel this way, this is what we expect from you. I think those are just general daily conversations that should happen at the start of the season, you know. And one of the women I interviewed did say that happened when she joined a uni ball team. Like the coach got them together, the 2 women on the team, and said, you know, this should be an environment that you thrive in. This is what's going to happen. If anything inappropriate happens, you let me know. It just, from the get-go, it just makes a better environment to be in. And then you feel as though you can go to the coaches with problems. You feel as though you sort of have a bit more stake in the team and a bit more of a role in the team because you're seen. And again, it's that contrary of easily forgotten. You're seen. When people have conversations with you directly, you're seen as a player. And it can be a 10-minute conversation. You don't need to give them counselling. Like, you just need a conversation. And yeah, I think it can be as easy as just having that chat to sort of set the foundations of a successful reach of success, I guess.
Kind of on the coaching side, like there's a really striking phrase in your research, which is jobs for the boys. How embedded is that culture within teams?
Yeah, I think that's a bit more of a mixed bag from the coaching perspective. I think the way a lot of women have described it is a luck of the draw. So if you're surrounded by good people that want you to do well, you will do well and you feel like you belong. And again, I did a post the other day and one of the sentences was, I shouldn't consider myself lucky, but I am lucky in order to have that space where I can make decisions, where I can just raise my voice, like where I can do a drill. Like I think from some of the male coaches I've spoken to, women lack that confidence so much. So they usually prefer to be in that sort of assistant role where they can assist a male coach in a position. And it's from that point then they can start to get a little bit more confident. Whereas others, they go straight into coordinator roles or lead position roles, and they're thriving because they're in that positive environment where they also have the backing of other coaches if something doesn't go right. So it has to be a collective, it has to be organizational, it has to be a program where everyone is in it together. Where things don't go right is where other coaches allow players to speak inappropriately towards women on the team, where coaches actively, again, don't communicate with what they want. And then blame women for not performing the way they do, even though they didn't say what they wanted them to do. So it's like a bit more of that emotional labor where you're trying to like read the minds of coaches of what your role is, or you get given the more maternalistic emotional roles. And then players that have just graduated are coaching over you, even though you've been in the program or like a team for like 2 years. So like there's this really big drop off where you see some women are getting more confident and they're thriving, and then others, they're still in there, but they're struggling in there because of everyone around them. And again, it can be the difference of getting a new head coach or getting a new coordinator. It can be that one person change where someone just changes the whole team culture. And I think it's the team culture that can really sway what takes place and what happens.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched on it very briefly there, but kind of mentioning kind of how female coaches kind of tend to fall in that very like maternal, like emotional labor role, like checking on players, like managing well-being. Do you think that's just purely because that's misogyny and that's just the suggestion that, well, that's kind of what a more female role is? Or do you think there's another kind of reason behind why that typically falls to like female coaches?
I don't even think it's necessarily malicious. I think women do it on their own volition. That in itself is an interesting thing where like some coaches wouldn't think to check in on someone because like they've had a difficult time at uni and they might affect their playing, or just the fact that it's affecting them and they're not themselves. And I think from what I've gathered based on conversations, for the most part, women just notice. But then socially, as we're socialized, women and young girls take on that caring and responsibility of other people's emotions anyway. It's like when you're in school and there's naughty boys and they're like, right, I'm going to put a girl in between you two, and then they have to manage the boys' behaviour. So I think it's a wider, interesting observation of social roles. I would say, however, that some of the women that I've spoken to about those sorts of things, there is not a malicious. There is an intent sometimes with male coaches where we have issues of injury and concussion where they just try to get, just walk it off. And it's the downplaying of injury. And then you have your female members of staff going, no, they're injured and they're concussed. The guy's been passed out. Do you know what I mean? So like you've got that, like not purposefully asking women to do the roles, but women are purposefully having to like manage the people that shouldn't be going back on the pitch. Yeah, I think that's what I would gather from that.
Yeah, and kind of you've mentioned kind of my next topic kind of throughout, because there's some really like practical and structural issues that kind of came through within your research. Like some of the examples around like facilities, changing spaces are really, I think for somebody who's not in the sport, are quite surprising to like how basic they are. Like, do you think there's a reason why there's still such like persistent issues in that?
Yeah, I think from what I've experienced myself, and heard obviously across the board, it's about the facilities overall. So like if you're going to a rugby club in like the arse end of nowhere and there's only 2 changing rooms because it was made in like 1948 and like women don't exist as people, you're not going to be able to just construct another facility with other changing rooms for women in there. But what you can do is time management. Like you can say, right, you're going to have it for this amount of time. The rest of you are going to do this. Like for the most part, the fact that I've seen a lot of men, young men, older men, happily just get changed outside and urinate outside when there's children as well. For the most part, if you need to change your timetable, as like, guys, just get changed outside, be ready to go in like 15 minutes, and then you have half an hour because there's a lot more of you to manage the space. That's one way of doing it. I think it's just managing the space that you have. Saying that, I've been to facilities where there's lots of changing rooms and I've been forgotten off the roster, or someone else has been forgotten off a roster in a similar situation and they've had to like open more changing rooms and whatever. So yeah, I think it's the structure of facilities in and of itself in the UK, probably not the best, but also I think it's just thinking ahead and just being like, right, this person's going to have this timetabled and that's it. There's no if, no's or buts. That's what's going to happen. I think it's relatively simple, but when it doesn't happen, it's a big thing. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're on your period.
I won't get changed anywhere, let alone in a random space. Like I don't want to be anywhere right now, let alone running about with a bunch of other men. Like, yeah. Because when you use the phrase kind of women as an afterthought, like is even like in kind of real terms, because obviously we're talking about, where are the changing rooms and representative to like where the like female toilets are. So when you're talking about how they're getting lost, it's because they're upstairs in one space, the men are all downstairs in their normal changing room, and there's no communication. It goes back to communication, right? There's no communication between the two to say, oh, we'll need to be ready at this point because we're going to do huddle before we go out. And that's that kind of women are kind of like that kind of afterthought of that in particular.
Yeah. And again, that has been quite a frequent response. And again, the thing is, it's not malicious. And I think when coaches realise, they're like, oh, that's awful, I didn't realise. But it's that like, yeah, you didn't realise. And it might be, like coaches have got a lot to manage in a day, right? So give it to someone in the committee. Give it to someone in a committee to be like, this time we're going to do this, half time you need to come in with us, we'll make sure none of the guys are like getting changed openly or anything like that. It's, again, some of this stuff isn't malicious, but then the things that make you feel forgotten aren't always malicious. So
and if there was a club kind of listening to this and thinking, what can we do to be better, like what are some kind of simple immediate changes you think they could make?
Just getting some more information in your pack from other places. Obviously, if you've got your own facilities, you know where it is, you know what's going to be open, you can timetable, you can schedule things way ahead of time. That also gives the option, if it's a home game, for people to arrive partly dressed, because some of the women I've spoken to are like, I don't mind. I don't mind like having my lowers on ready. I just want to know. So it's just having that communication, saying, look, this is going to be available to you. Communication in terms of that respect. Certainly when it comes to the talks and half time, just having that timetable available. Sometimes it is available and people just forget. So again, part of the onus is on the players in that respect. Having reminders, having a committee just to remind people about that organisation on the day. When it's away, that's when it becomes a bit more difficult. That's when women do have a lot more anxieties about what it's going to look like. How far away am I going to be? Is it going to be anywhere I can put my sanitary towel? Like, is the bin in a really obvious place? Some women have had to like wrap it and put it in a game day bag, and then it's been raining and all the rest of it. So just those little things that you can kind of prep for. And again, do I have time? Do I have access to any changing room? Am I going to share it with the referees, and are they going to kick me out? Because that's happened a couple of times. And again, referees also need places to go. So it's just understanding on the whole what that space looks like and what is available. Like, it's not about asking people to like make brand new changing rooms or like bring in a whole locker room just for one person, but it's just about management. It's about organisation, and it's just letting people know, I think, what's available, and just remembering that you have a woman on the team. That's usually quite a useful thing to do.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it, how much it kind of comes back to like simplicity of communication and clear communication kind of throughout, which is, it's not surprising. So it's not shocking in the slightest. And like, these issues obviously don't exist kind of in isolation. They connect to wider kind of questions around like identity, inclusion and culture of the sport. Your research also includes experiences from trans and non-binary participants. What in particular kind of stood out to you most from those conversations specifically?
I think it comes down to just wanting to play. I think, like I mentioned, we pay relatively a lot to play this sport. People just want to have a space of belonging, and again, they want communication. I think the people I interviewed referred to the recent BAFA guidelines on gendered participation, and I think it was the fact of like, no one spoke to us, or there wasn't a working group. There wasn't, well, at least not to my knowledge, perhaps I'm wrong, but there wasn't like a forum, a place where you can go and just like share your experiences and share your thoughts. And people just want to be able to play. And I think this is where people seem only concerned about women's, like cis women's safety, because that's what a lot of the trans misogyny comes down to. But we're in an environment where it's not safe for women, and it's not safe for women to play sport overall. Like, if we're talking about the grand narrative, right? So if we really care, we would be focusing less on the 1% minority and more about the big structural changes within sport, within this sport, within other sports. And what was interesting, however, was the people I've spoken to. So I've spoken to 2 trans women and one sort of non-binary trans masculine person. And one of the trans women were like, I don't think it would be fair for me to play against women, whereas the other obviously would feel quite different. So that in itself is interesting, the spectrum of voice and experience, and it also varies by position. And that's the interesting thing about the sport, based on the variety of positions, where you've got some very, very big people in one space and then some smaller people in the other. And it's that idea of force, of violence, of interpersonal violence that comes along with the assumptions of certain bodies, of certain body types. But I think, again, the most important thing we can do is respect, which doesn't seem to happen a lot. You don't necessarily have to agree with a particular action, but I think just showing basic human dignity and respect to talk about particular people is a thing that, again, can be very, very easily done. But yeah, I think there's a long way to go in terms of understanding, differences in gendered bodies and their own lived experiences, and where we can find good spaces and safe spaces for everyone to participate in one way, shape or form. But yeah, I think, again, it's that feeling of isolation and not really feeling safe and respected across the board.
Yeah, and there's the discussion kind of around like lad culture, like especially I think at university level. How much do you think that shapes the environment that players are stepping into?
A lot. Yes, and I think this is where you'll probably see the difference in age bracket in terms of the age bracket of coaches and the respect they're given in certain environments too. So if you're in a uni ball team and you've just graduated and now you're coaching your cohort that you used to play with, you might be treated differently compared to the 45-year-old that's just come in. And equally, it's the same with women. If you're a young woman coaching a senior team and the guys have been playing for a couple of years, you might find that they're a bit like less reluctant to be like listening to you because what do you know about this? But yeah, the lad culture thing, I think it interplays with a lot of issues, again, not just about women, but for men as well, like men's mental health, men's physical health. You know, we obviously know that there's a big problem around violence against women, but there's also a big problem around sort of men's suicide rates and mental health. When you've got a team of so many people and you feel like you can't talk about certain things, that comes down to that lad culture as well. That comes down to those intersections of racism as well as sexism and homophobia and all those sorts of things that come with it. But I think it's thinking about the particular culture that you make as a group of lads. Like, yeah, you might be able to have a joke, but you know that you actually want people to share their feelings. They're having a really rubbish day. They're having family problems. And they've just lost their grandparents. Like, you've got all these big life things that happen behind sport. And if you don't have that space to talk about it with your mates, what are you doing in that space? Like, what is the give back? So yeah, I think again, if you have that good culture, great things can happen. But when it thrives off the less good things, let's say, it just creates more problems for everyone. It creates more barriers, it creates more harms, it legitimizes more harms, it allows that sort of normalized violence to thrive as we get into other areas. So yeah, I think great things can happen when there's good people. I think that's something I still stand on, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, do you think there's currently a gap between like what policies say like around inclusion and equality, to get slightly more kind of technical, and what do you think is happening on the ground kind of in relation to that, if anything?
Yes. It's a very but I'm thinking just as a sporting thing overall, literally any environment, any industry where there are people, it's not all working. It's not all working the same way. Like, but obviously policies are there as a principle, as guidance, as legislation. So when things go wrong, we have these to refer to. But people are very complex things. People enjoy power. People enjoy doing what they're not meant to do. Some people don't even realize what they're doing is bad. Like, that's the other thing. That's kind of the tricky side of it. Some people don't realize how bad it is out there. Like, you know, preliminary conversation we had earlier about people that didn't realize this is happening to women in these different spaces, because why would they? They've never experienced it. So yes, I think they are there for good reason. They are there as good principle. But if you've got people within an organization that also aren't the best people to be in that organization, that's also where problems occur. And again, not saying this is a specific American football thing, but we see it in loads of sports. We see it in any Netflix sporting documentary you can click on. There's going to be problems. We had problems with the Welsh Rugby Union a couple of years ago about sexism and misogyny on the board. We have it in football. We have it in literally every sport. So I don't think it's a matter of saying the world is terrible and nothing good happens, because things do progress, things are in place to protect people, but society is full of complex people. That's an even more important reason for us to be able to feel comfortable to talk to coaches, to feel comfortable to talk to the people that matter, that can help us bring forward an issue. So yeah, it all comes back to that communication and culture again, I think.
Yeah, and obviously we've spoken at quite depth, but like there are clearly challenges. But what's kind of key about your research as well is also highlights examples where things are working well. So you include a couple of examples of clubs that are getting it right and creating genuinely inclusive environments. What are the key things that those teams are doing differently, do you think?
Yeah, I think respect and communication, like actually respecting women as players and as coaches, involving them in coaching conversations, like asking them for feedback, asking them what they would like to achieve out of the football structure, and certainly from a playing perspective, being invested in. So one of the examples was at one of the university teams that didn't have kit that fit the player, so they went out and bought some. Like, one, that's a great investment anyway, and two, like, how great must that feel for someone to actually buy kit for you, expensive kit that enables you to play and excel and exceed. So that's another good example. And yeah, just encouraging you and giving you reps in training, let alone at a game day, giving you feedback, like actually understanding that you want to do this at a serious note. So giving you feedback, giving that attention. And then the example I mentioned earlier about the head coach sort of getting the women on the team together and being like, this is what I expect from you. This is what you can expect from me. This is what you can expect from this team. And you are to be treated, no differently from the rest of the team. I think those have been some things that have sort of stuck with me in relation to the research and sort of my own practice as well. So yeah, there's been some good stuff, and just people being nice, like good coaches that just treat you like a person. Yeah, I think that's really it.
Yeah, and I think I know the answer to my next question, but I will ask it anyway. If you had a room full of coaches listening right now, what's the one thing you'd want them to take away from your research?
Communication and understanding that you might have an idea of what's happening in your team, but you probably don't. And again, that also comes back to communication. Asking your committee to do like an anonymous welfare survey. Like I've talked to people across in the research, but just generally about things that have happened, and I've gone, God, do the coaches know about this? And they go, no. But like these are the things that happen sometimes under their noses, in other spaces outside of the immediacy of the team, but it infiltrates the team. If there's a social event where someone's sexually harassed, that's going to come back to your team. So it's like understanding that just because you think something's going great doesn't necessarily mean it is. So yeah, communication I think is really key.
Yeah, and is there anything different that you'd want like players to maybe take away? Like what role do you think they can play in shifting culture within teams?
I think just not underestimating the importance of small actions. So again, this goes to new people in the team anyway. Like if you see a woman on the team and she's on her own, just go talk to her. Like just go invite her over to throw a ball. Like just say, oh, nice job. Give like confident feedback of, oh, you can go harder, or yeah, that was great. Just involve them in the space, like involve them in the conversation. And yeah, just making sure that they're also enjoying it and that they feel safe. And that can be done in a couple of different ways and a couple of different environments. But yeah, I think it's just making them not feel easily forgotten, I think is an important thing. And it's an easy thing.
It's not that difficult. It's not complex. It's not difficult. No. Kind of despite... Sorry, what?
Are people.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as simple as that, really, isn't it? And kind of despite everything you've uncovered, like what gives you optimism about the future of the sport?
I think seeing the growth of the sport, like obviously we've got the flag stuff going on in schools, which again could come with its own difficulties, but I think it's just great to see so many people getting excited about the sport. You see more people wanting to get involved in coaching. You are seeing women just openly talking about their coaching more and posting about it. And I think that is really important because it goes down to that quote of like, if you can see her, you can be her. So like starting those networks, knowing those networks, like there should probably be like an open, consistent women's coaching forum, like because the experiences we go through are often different to men in the sport. So I think it's just having that openness is something that I think would be really strong going forward. And yeah, I think we'll just have to see where we are in the next 10 years. But I think it's the amount of young women that are involved in these programs is great. I think we've just got to provide that enthusiasm and still install that confidence and keep that confidence there, because we see that when they reach 13, 14, that's when the struggles drop. Well, the struggles start, participation drops. So yeah, I think the new generation can bring some interesting things to the sport.
Yeah, not to us both to sound incredibly old, but yes, I think that's the positive thing. And seeing like these, obviously seeing how successful like Team GB Flag are right now, that is something that's obviously is inspiring that next generation. Yes. And we can only, and like the Women's Flag Football League in particular is something that that's becoming very prominent. So it's just about pushing that and really driving kind of young women in particular to play, just to have a go at it. I always like to say that football in any capacity can be for anyone. You don't have to be a certain size. You can do a lot of things. You can play pretty much across multiple different positions. So it's a great sport for maybe kids that feel that they don't belong somewhere else. They can try and belong into flag. Kind of looking ahead for you, what are, if any, kind of the next steps for this research for you?
Yes, I need to actually stop data collecting because every couple of months I'm like, okay, guys, go a couple more weeks, but trying to fit things into diaries or whatever is quite complicated. So I'll probably stop in about a month or two, and then I need to start digesting. Like I need to start looking at the whole. Because I did need to take some significant time away. There was a period where I was doing interview, and it was all awful. And it, like, as someone in the sport and as a researcher, it was just too much. I'll start an analysis, get a couple of articles out, and I'd like to do something proactive within the sporting community. Like I said, maybe host a couple of like women's player forums, women's coaching forums, just talk about stuff together and just feel a bit more connected. Because again, the teams are so spread across. I'm wanting to understand where women want this sport to go as well. Not just the women's leagues, but like where are women's roles in this sport, and how do we navigate that? Who are the people that need to be involved with? Who are the people that need to be in the room when that's happening, so people can put policy into practice? So yeah, a lot. As with all the things I do, a couple of major things I need to try and manage. But yeah, I think it's coming to a natural end now where I need to start making sense of it and starting that analysis and sort of getting things together.
Yeah. And then kind of before you kind of obviously finish that part up, if there's people out there listening that want to get involved, contribute, or just kind of even learn more than what we've been able to talk about, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yes, so there's an Instagram page called the GAF Project, GAAF Project, Gender and American Football, that stands for. And you can just give me a message on there and I'll reply as quickly as I can. And yeah, very happy to have just relaxed conversations or do a recorded conversation if people wanted to share their own experiences. And certainly I should say as well, this is open to flag and contact. What has been interesting is that it's been all contact. So I'm not sure there's an interesting dynamic there about flag teams being different or not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to chat to a couple of people within the flag format as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So if people didn't be able to catch that, we'll have that in the description as well, and we'll link to all kind of Zoe's Instagram handles and such there as well, for sure. So yeah, if you're a flag player out there and you have some interesting things to say and you want to contribute, please make sure to drop Zoe a message, just so she can get the full picture, because that's obviously really important when doing research.
Yes. And I should say the good as well as the bad. Like
yes.
If you've had no awful experiences, that's absolutely okay. Like I just want to hear experiences. So yeah, don't feel like, oh, I've had nothing significant happen. That's horrible. Wonderful. Let's chat about it. Like what was great for you? You know what I mean? So yeah, be great.
Yeah, if you get that positive feedback, then that's obviously you can take that into how people can improve and how culture can get better and such. So yeah, all feedback is good as feedback, even if it's bad feedback. It's good for research purposes.
Yeah.
Zoe, it's been a fascinating conversation and a really, really important one for the future of the sport. So thank you so much for reaching out to us that you'd like to come on an episode and talk about it. I think it's been very eye-opening, and I hope it's been eye-opening for people listening to us at home tonight.
Pleasure to chat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So thanks for listening to Tartan Touchdown. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your teammates, coaches, and anyone involved in the game, because these conversations are exactly what the sport needs. And be sure to follow us across all of our social media accounts and subscribe to us on YouTube for all our latest episodes. We have a really great list of guests and episodes coming up soon with how the summer is lining up. Just a whole bunch of things happening around the sport. So please make sure to keep track of us. And until next time, we'll see you soon.